Welcome to this hobby of ours. I am your hostee, and I'm very excited to present this episode to you today. It's going to be a two-parter talking about Rolex alternatives. I am still wearing the IWC Mark 15. If you've not had a chance to see the episode of the IWC Mark series buying guide episode, that was a lot of fun, put a lot of work into that. Enjoy yourself. And today's episode is kind of a strange one. It's an inspiration, I dare say a homage, to another YouTube creator's video. If you're not subscribed to this gentleman's channel, stop this video, go subscribe to his, and then bounce on back. His name is Mike, and his channel is ThisWatchThatWatch. I don't know how long he's been on YouTube. I think it's a couple years. But doing some of the finest modern content, some of the most unique perspectives. I enjoy his channel tremendously. He is on my must-watch list, and I hope, Mike, I hope that you're seeing this episode because you're the inspiration for this. He released an episode several months ago called Rolex Alternatives, and it's basically he took the entire catalog lineup and he chose an alternative watch that would kind of fill the bill for that watch. Now, sometimes they're cheaper, sometimes they're a little more expensive, sometimes they're dead on, and sometimes he has a couple suggestions. So I was inspired by that, and I wanted to challenge myself, and I wanted to take that video concept of his that I'm sure has been around a bit, but direct inspiration from Mike, and I wanted to do it my way. It's not to say this way is better. I agree on a lot of the ones he picked. Some of them I didn't, but that's the thing. In modern society, we could disagree with one another, but still respect one another, and that is the goal of the hobby. So what am I doing for my version of the video? You're going to see in the upper left corner of the deck, you're going to see the Rolex watch. In the lower left, you're going to see the watch that Mike chose. And then off to the right, I chose 5 cornerstone brands: Omega, Tudor, Seiko / Grand Seiko, lumping those into one, Oris, Steinhardt. And I picked a watch from each of those makers for the appropriate Rolex watch that we'll be looking at. And myself, I chose a rando. So my personal pick is going to show up in the random box. And I'll probably comment along the way. I didn't want to have a lot of duplication, but it's kind of challenging. There's a couple duplicates in here, couldn't avoid it. And there are some misses in here as well. I think Steinhardt is doing some of the finer Rolex homage pieces. But they don't have one for everyone in their category, and they certainly don't have a precious metal piece either. But we will get into the weeds on that when it is appropriate. Before we dive in, let's pay some bills. hobbyofhours.com. We have got the Porsche design t-shirts. We have got the Hobby of Ours book, 1001 Watch Designs made by yours truly and Skynet. Go pick some of that up. Support the channel. It's an awesome way to share the love. And without further ado, Mike, this one's for you. Once again, in the upper left, we'll see the Rolex watch. The lower left, we'll see Mike and his choices. And across the right, we've got the 5 brands that I have dedicated myself to diving through their catalog to find something to shoehorn, and then a random pick, which is more or less my personal pick for the item. Getting right to it, Mike chose the Aquaterra and the Nomus Club. I think the Nomus Club is an absolute perfection here. I simply have the Aquaterra plugged in elsewhere. I think down in the Datejust line. It is a great watch for this as well, but I prefer it down there. Looking at Omega. The Omega Seamaster 120M line, which predates the Aquaterra line, a bit of a shoehorn, I realize, but they have so many different colorways in this lineup, and it is more or less entry level for Omega. I felt it was a good fit there. Tudor, we're looking at the Black Bay 36 lineup, pretty much the closest they can muster for a 36mm dress watch option. I think Seiko is really leading it here with their cocktail line. There are so many different really beautiful dial variants for this that this is pretty much the pick of the litter here. Oris, I went with their Pro Pilot, their new titanium models in 40, because frankly they offer similar number of colorways as the Rolex OP in its latest iteration. Steinhardt, somewhat conspicuously, this particular model, the Adventure, is going to show up twice, mostly because, a bit hand-tied with Steinhardt. But they released this really beautiful Explorer look-alike in this colorway, and they have a few more, which filled in for the Explorer. You'll see in a minute. But this is pretty much the offering they have with, multiple colorway offerings. And then lastly, rando, Ball. Ball is a brand that I want to get more familiar with. They also jumped on the train of multiple colorways, and they make a great watch. They always have. They're just a little bit under publicized in the market. They politely declined, I wanted to say refused, politely declined to ship me a watch. Maybe when they see that I'm covering some of their watches, they might open up the coffers. I don't want it for free. I'll ship it back, Ball, but help a brother out. Loan me a watch, dude. And we're looking at the Rolex Explorer next. Yes, I know it is not a dress watch. It is in the sports line. However, I had too many in the other videos, so I needed to bump it up to here, and it kind of fit. It is more or less an Oyster Perpetual with a special dial and a bit of provenance. I really like Mike's pick of the Omega Railmaster here. I think the IWC Mark 20 might be a better substitute for the Datejust, because it is kind of dressy, purpose-built. I don't know, still not a bad choice here at all. For me, I went with my very own Omega Seamaster, and okay, it is officially a 120M as well, but it has that Explorer dial, and it's just the perfect fit. And there are, there's a black or a blue one. Tudor, no surprise here. The Ranger, we saw that one coming. Seiko, obviously it's going to be the Alpinist, but I chose to show the Sassy, the SSA SS Limited Edition 500 in Tiffany blue. God, I want this watch. I want this watch, but it's quartz and it doesn't dip under 3,500, so that's on my wish list. Oris, they don't specifically have a field watch, but their Pilot is just as good, just as robust for this category. The Big Crown Pro Pilot date, and here we have that Steinhardt, the Adventure again, but I wanted to throw it in here as the white dial because I think that eventually Rolex is going to produce a white dial in the modern era. Fairly gorgeous. And no surprise, in the rando, my pick, the Zin 556. Gosh, what an epic watch. And 1/6 of the cost. You can get these for $1,000 if you hunt them. Sometimes as high as 1.5. But an amazing watch, amazing technology, and a super great fit for the Explorer. Okay, the Air King, maybe my second most conspicuous shoehorn into the dress line. Okay, it's a Milgauss case, and certainly Milgauss is considered sports line. And I don't know, this watch itself was based on the speedometer clocks of that one super fast race car, but for me, it's like an Explorer. It's a bigger Explorer with some additional stuff going on. So guess what? It's in the dress category for this episode. And Mike had the Zenith chronograph, which is a great watch. I don't know that I would have gone chronograph here, with the exception of my random submission. But other than the fact that this dial on the Air King looks like that cockpit, it's not really a, motorsports watch. But, oh, well, what are you going to do? Omega? I went with the reduced. The Speedmaster reduced. Yeah, going back on what I just said about a chronograph. But I liked it because it has all the digits called out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc. So I thought it was a suitable drop-in for that. Tudor. The Odd Duck. The North Flag. Also not necessarily a motorsports watch, but enough of an odd duck in the same way that the Air King is an odd duck. I thought that it fit. Seiko. Another chronograph when I just bemoaned them. Well, this is the Seiko Rider, and this is the Nar Furry limited edition one. You can tell a little bit from this photo that the dial is offset. It was made for sports bike riders so they could read the time while they're going through their slaloms, and it's an affordable, beautiful motorsports watch from Seiko. I love that piece. I have two of those. One I'm going to wear and one I'm going to flip down the road. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Oris. The Oris BC4 Meisterflieger. Wow. Yeah. So odd duck. It's got that unusual super large crown to rotate that internal bezel. You know me, I'm rarely without words. This is a big one. It's a chunky monkey. This is a large Marge, and certainly one of the more goonier offerings in the Oris catalog, and that's why it's coming here. Steinhardt, the Le Mans GT Heritage. Another chronograph. Four chronographs in the for the one that I said shouldn't be a chronograph. Might be, but this is an older one in their lineup. And, you know, if we pretend that the Monaco doesn't exist, it definitely fits in here. Ba-bam, of course, Porsche design. Gosh, you know me, I'm a one-trick pony with Porsche design typically. But this watch is also based on a car's gauges, the Porsche 911 gauges, just like the Air King is based on the gauges from that fancy race car. So, guess what? It fits. The datejust. I think that Mike spot on with the Cartier Santos. It's going to be hard to come up with a better one than that. But here is where I've got the Aquaterra, the modern Aquaterra coaxial dropping in. Yeah, this is for me, gosh, it's as near perfect a choice as that Cartier for sure. I'm going old school for Tudor Prince date. If you're familiar with legacy Tudor pieces, they have a date day, which you'll see in about 5 minutes, and a Prince date, so fairly easy one here. Seiko, I went with the Superman. They've got other dials, other plain dials that kind of fit into this mold of a dress watch with a date, a little bit of water resistance, and you can pretty much, I mean, this one happens to be Grand Seiko line. You can pretty much find anything in Seiko if you dig deep enough. For Oris, we're looking at the Big Crown Pointer date. Their main dress watch certainly has the same sort of, different dials, different case materials. And somewhat strangely, for a Steinhardt, the Architect. Now, this is clearly a Royal Oak one, but you're going to see that the options for Steinhardt are going to start getting thinner and thinner as we get deeper and deeper into it. But they've got several dial colors. It is a classic look, albeit not a Datejust classic look, but sometimes we have to play the cards we're dealt. And as for a random, JLC. I think the JLC Reverso is as good a substitute as the Cartier or the Omega in this case, especially since you can get, JLC Reversos up and down the price band. Certainly at the higher end, I'm not talking about the tourbillon ones or the chronograph ones because, the Datejust doesn't compete that deeply. But on the lower end of JLC production, it's a fairly good fit for a Datejust substitute. Onwards and upwards to the date. I think that the Vacherons below are a good substitute. Although they're quite a bit sportier, the sheer fact that they're in precious metals and similar colorways is certainly a good, a good reason for bringing it in. I have some other ideas about great fits. As far as Omega's offerings, I went with a Constellation Globemaster. It's available in precious metals, and it does a little bit more than the date, but in terms of trying to achieve a similar price band and functionality. This one gives you a little bit more for your money. You get the month, etc. But pretty gorgeous watch, and you'd be paying somewhat comparable for it. Tudor, okay, no precious metals here, but the date day. I kind of, instead of precious metals, I kind of attacked the same complication aspect for this one. And that's about as good as it's going to get for the Tudor line. Grand Seiko. I went with the Seasons collection. Nowhere near the same price band. In fact, probably a third, if not a fourth in some cases. But similar beauty, similar variance. It's got the Power Reserve plus day. Doesn't have the... Power Reserve plus date does not have the day. But going Grand Seiko on that one. And the Oris Atelier Pointer Day Date, also going complication station here as opposed to precious metals. This is as close as Oris gets. And Steinhardt, the Barrique Classique Black. The unusual hand play gives the Steinhardt Barrique its special spice and makes it an eye catcher par excellence. And I quote from the Steinhardt website, as I said on the previous slide, Steinhardt's getting thinner and thinner as we go upper and upper on the price band. And my rando choice, Glace Chute Original Panamatic Lunar. Why? They offer this in a couple different colorways. I know that they've got this in some different metals. And yes, it's a moon phase, but we have to have something to, that je ne sais quoi, to approach the day date. And granted, this one is generally, a third the price as well. But that's my random choice for a day date substitute. Sky Dweller, or as Big Wrist Energy says, a datejust on steroids. Probably Rolex's most complicated watch. I kind of put this ahead of the Yachtmaster 2 in terms of complication. I think that's reasonable. That command bezel is just so friggin' brilliant. I gotta hand it to them. And Mike went with the Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda GMT Rattrapant, which is an interesting choice. I think it's an excellent choice considering the rarity, or rather the rareness of the Sky Dweller complication, the rareness of the Parmigiani complication. I think that Parmigiani is absolutely beautiful. And unless I'm mistaken, they're pretty close in terms of price band. As for me, I went with the Omega Aquaterra World Timer. It's there. Omega does make a tourbillon, but in terms of the next step down complication, this is probably it for them. And I think it's probably one of my better picks for this, because this one you're going to see in a minute, this entire slide of the deck is kind of lean. The most complicated Tudor I could find was the Heritage Advisor Split Time, which is not a Sky Dweller-esque, but it's the most complicated complication that they offer. And fairly gorgeous, if not a bit busy in the southern hemisphere there. As for Seiko Grand Seiko, similarly, this is their black ceramic spring drive chronograph GMT. So we've got a chronograph, we've got a GMT, we've got spring drive. And this is more along the lines of, okay, yes, it's a GMT, and it's their most complicated in this kind of price band. So a bit of a shoehorn. Oris ProPilot X 10-day power reserve. Rather large, does not have a second time zone, but it's probably the most complicated watch that Oris makes, and that's how I got into it for this. Steinhardt, unfortunately, a no contest on this one. Just kind of bottomed out. They simply don't have something. They've got a GMT, but it's in their sports line, so we'll see that from them later. Sorry, Steinhardt, nothing here. And for me, I went with Gerard Perregaux, the WWTC Worldwide Time Command, 1966. Dual crown, world timer, probably one of the more beautiful executions from GP. They make a bunch of these, and they actually do make it in precious metals. So one of the better options. I almost got into one of the steel ones of this, but I couldn't get the seller to get to my price point. We do believe in being disciplined collectors, but GP is definitely on they're going places, mark my words. Last but not least, in the Rolex dress category, the 1908, I think Mike has an interesting selection in the lower left corner. He went with the JLC Master Ultra Thin Moon, the JLC Perpetual Calendar Ultra, the Patek Calatrava, and the Nomos Tangente Gold. I don't agree with the JLCs on this because they've got more going on than this 1908. I think that the Rolex Cellini with the moon phase is more, appropriately matched to that one JLC. So I don't know that it matches. Certainly matches price-wise. I think the Patek Calatrava is probably the best match of those. And the Nomos is neat. Like if I was covering Nomos on the right, this would be the one I would shoehorn in. But yeah, I don't know about that one per se. So Omega. I had to go big. I went with their tourbillon, and it is far more expensive than the 1908. It's at least 2x, but it is pretty much the highest end Omega that they make price-wise in precious metal. So it's the DeVille Tourbillon. Fairly gorgeous watch. I would love to get one on wrist. But I don't know if that's in their current offering or not. But I do know it's in their back catalog. The Tudor Royal, also not a great fit, but probably their fanciest watch. Not in precious metal, but we got some Roman numerals, and we've got that bezel, which is somewhat, I don't know, it's almost an engine turn bezel, but the spacing is such that it's probably the best we're going to find there. Much easier of a choice for Seiko. I went Creedor Aichi 2, which is still a bit more expensive than the Rolex, but it's the best dress watch they have to offer in terms of finishing and materials, so fairly easy to peg that one. Now, Oris comes surprisingly close. This is their new LE 110, 110 years, 18 karat rose gold, 10-day power reserve. A fairly gorgeous watch, fairly pricey as well. I don't know that a lot of these are being purchased because the price band for this watch, you could be into a different watch at a different brand that's a little more prestigious per se. I love, love, love Oris, but much like when Tudor released that Black Bay in gold, 25, 26 grand, no, the person who has 25, 26 grand isn't shopping Tudor. Similarly here with the Oris, but great job nonetheless, Oris. Probably one of the more challenging entries, but you did a great job. And then Steinhardt, Marine Moon Phase Silver is about the best they get in their dress lineup. A lovely watch, and a somewhat affordable Moon Phase as well. For me, you probably saw this one coming up Grant Street. The Cartier Rewind in Platinum. Probably a little pricier than the 1908. I think this Cartier is going to be cruising at 40 G's, and I think the 1908 is upper 20s, but a fairly easy one for me to pick for this one. And gosh, I would absolutely love to own that watch. There you have it, Rolex Alternatives Dress Edition. And yes, I know the Explorer is not technically a dress watch. It is in the sports lineup, but to be fair, it's an OP with a special dial and a bit of provenance and history. So I'm okay with shoehorning it in on this episode. I would love to hear what your alternates are. If you've got a special watch in mind out there that could sub in for one of these, by all means, let me know in the comments. And by all means, stay tuned for the second episode where we tackle the Rolex Sport models. Thank you again, Mike, for your inspiration. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. Really loving your channel. And I hope that wherever you are in this wonderful, beautiful hobby of ours, you are doing well, that you are blessed. We will catch you in the next one. Peace. If you'd like to support the channel, head over to hobbyofhours.com. We've got artwork, coffee mugs, hats, t-shirts, and even a watch book. 1001 Watch Designs, Volume 1. Over 1,000 designs in here. Steampunk, super futuristic, kaleidoscope, even super real ones. Watches that you could probably put on your wrist today. It's a great way to support the channel. Thanks for coming along on the ride.